You're listening to Interviews with Choir Leaders. I'm your host, Dan Bennett. In each episode, I talk to a choir leader about how they got started, what their choir is like, the methods they use to lead their choir to success, and other choir-related topics of interest. If you're enjoying the podcast, you can support the show by helping it grow. Subscribe and follow the podcast, or better still, share an episode with a friend. You can also support the show directly with money. If you become a Patreon supporter, you can send us a little bit of money each time a new episode comes out. Every little bit helps us to keep on bringing you fascinating conversations with great choir leaders. Check out the link in the description. Now let's get started. Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Interviews with Choir Leaders. My guest today is the fantastic Chris Rowbury, and reading from his website, Chris is a patient, charismatic teacher with 30 years experience. He has a relaxed style, laced with plenty of humour. He will get you singing in wonderful harmony in a matter of minutes, and I'm delighted to talk with you today, Chris. How are you going?
I'm doing fine, thanks, Dan.
Cool. And
I wrote that a long time ago. It sounds a bit pretentious now when it comes back to
No, it's fine. And so where are you talking to us from today?
I'm from Suffolk in the east of England, sitting in a cold office. It's winter over here at the moment. We've just had 50-mile-an-hour winds and a big storm come over from the States.
Wow.
And lots of rain, but it's sunny today, so it's quite nice.
Oh, good. Yeah, it's been really hot here in Canberra. Although today, blessedly free, blessedly cool, and a bit of a breeze. So otherwise, I'd have the aircon blasting. But it's quite nice and cool here right now today. So, Chris, how would you describe your choir leading style if someone was going to come to your workshop or rehearsal? What would your choir leading style be like?
I would like to think that it's fun is the most important thing, I guess. Relaxed, inclusive, not disciplinarian. I remember I took over a community choir some years ago, and several people left because I didn't shout at them. They were used to being shouted at, and they were, no, it's F sharp, F sharp. Don't be so stupid. I'm very patient and forgiving and relaxed and kind of maybe a bit bumbly, makes it look like not that I don't know what I'm doing, but that it's very relaxed and natural. People don't see the mechanics behind that, I suppose. So I try and get people on my side and to feel that we're all equal in the room. I just happen to know a few songs that they don't know.
Well, that sounds like a nice atmosphere. It is nice when the choir leader is a down-to-earth person that is not putting themselves above everybody else.
Yeah, I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think the people, choir leaders who I've seen and admired the most are like that. They sort of promote the atmosphere that, hey, this is a group project that we're working on here, and I just know a little bit more than you guys, so I'm just going to teach you what I know.
I don't understand any other approach really, because if you don't create that sort of atmosphere, how are people going to give of their best? If they're always a little bit worried that you're going to shout at them or tell them off, or they're going to get something wrong, or they're not good enough to do it, how are you going to get the best out of them? So if you behave as if everything is fun and relaxed and really easy, then they kind of go, okay, well, it must be relaxed and easy, and they do it.
Yeah. Well, I've been reading lots of your blog posts, and I've this really nice little quote that you've just reminded me of. You said, "The attitude of the song leader matters. If the person teaching the songs behaves as if the learning is easy, that will carry over to the singers. Oh, if he thinks it's easy, it must be."
Yeah, exactly. I quite often get that comment at the end of a workshop that people say, when we first started, it seemed that it was going to be impossible. There's no way that we could do this. And yet somehow he made us do the impossible. But it wasn't me that made them do it. It was just giving that space and permission, I guess, because I figure that the job of a choir leader is to get out of the way and to remind people that the singers are the ones that are actually doing it. It's very easy for choir leaders with big egos to come in and make the choir depend on them. But I see my job as just sort of walking off and they carry on singing.
Yeah. Again, you reminded me of another thing I read of yours just recently. You said, "I've always seen my job as choir leader to become redundant." What do you mean by that? Are you trying to put us out of a job?
Well, what happens is here's a typical example. So I've been teaching a song, right? I stand in front of one section teaching it. I maybe move my hands up and down to indicate where the notes are because I always teach by ear. And then after a while, that section gets it perfectly. Then I stop moving my arms up and down. I just stand there listening to them and they're singing it perfectly. And then I walk away and they all go wrong. And I say to them, "What, why are you going wrong?" And they say, "Well, you've left." I said, "But I wasn't doing anything. I'm just standing and listening to you." And they said, "Well, we need you." And I said, "Why do you need me? I've taught you the song. You're singing it perfectly. I'm just going off now for a coffee break or something. You do it on your own." And after a little bit of fumbly stumbly, they sing it perfectly. And I think a lot of the time, choir leaders take the power away from the singers. I think it's really important to remind them that they're really good. They have the responsibility, and they're the ones that are making the harmonies. And by standing out the front, it brings back all those memories they had of teachers at school who made them feel that they weren't really capable of doing stuff. You needed the teacher to be there all the time. So that's what I mean about making myself redundant. Once you've taught the song and they're singing it perfectly, I don't need to be there anymore.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, you want to remove the crutch, isn't it? It's like you teach them the thing, you use your hands gestures to go up and down, then you just listen for
Yeah.
a minute, and then eventually you need them to realize that, hey, you've got it now. You don't need me even standing right here for you.
But that's the bit I don't understand. What? How am I helping them by just
Yeah.
standing in front of them listening? It doesn't. I'm not doing anything for them, and
Yes.
yet when I walk away, they go wrong.
Well, you
Bizarre.
must have a very reassuring presence as you're standing there, I think. Well, but it's so important to create that safe environment as you basically described before. It's how can we do our best work unless we're feeling safe and there's no chance of the teacher yelling at me in any way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had a really quite it got quite slightly nasty debate with some people in the States on social media who come from the kind of, I'd like to say, the choral world, which is like posh, formal. They seem to be a lot more formal over in America. And they would say things like, well, of course, it was only a singing for fun group. And I'd go, what do you mean it's only a singing for fun group? What do you sing for? Misery or to be upset or depression or what's, I don't understand. If
Yeah.
you're not singing for fun, why are you doing it? It's bizarre. And they found they thought it was very disparaging. And they thought that a singing for fun group can never get to any particular standard. They could never sing very well because it's just for fun. Ridiculous.
I agree. I agree. I think that that kind of elitism is it can be a bit destructive. You know what I mean? Like I think that kind of elitism is what's keeping people out of choirs as opposed to inviting them into choirs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been over to the States a few times, mostly through the barbershop harmony scene, and I think that's a bit more sort of bit more like a community choir kind of thing. It's less kind of like the way you described the choral inverted comma scene, and possibly a little bit more grassrootsy, shall we say? But yeah, it seems like in the UK, from what I know, I haven't been over myself yet, but a similar kind of culture to community choirs in Australia, where there are lots of different kinds of ones, and lots of non-auditioned ones, and lots of ones that are for fun, inverted commas, which is wonderful. You know what I mean? It can be. I think it's so important that singing is accessible to everybody.
Yeah.
Can you tell me what is your earliest memory of singing in harmony?
My memory is not very good. I don't really remember as a child very much, but we didn't have music in the house. My parents aren't musical at all. So I think it must have been making up harmonies, listening to the radio. From a very early age, I've always sung the harmonies against whatever's on the radio, pop songs and stuff. And I don't know where that came from, but I didn't like singing the tune.
Wow. What kind of artists or songs were you listening to?
I don't know, 60s Beatles, all that kind of stuff, yeah, that sort of era, 60s, I guess, with my little transistor radio sitting in the garden, listening to the top 20, and then later on recording it in my bedroom. But just, I don't know, just immersing myself in that and just singing along with it automatically. It's just seemed the obvious thing to do. I don't know why, but I've always done that.
That's really interesting. So you did you do some recording experiments where you recorded yourself singing harmony?
Uh, no, it wasn't that sophisticated. I just had a little ghetto blaster, and when the top 20 came on the radio, you'd press record to try and not record the DJ, but just the record bits.
Yes.
But there was no way that I could record myself singing against myself in those days, anyway.
Okay.
You needed two machines, and that got really complicated.
Yeah, it's a lot easier these days. You can do it on one
laptop.
Yeah.
And I don't really like the sound of my own voice, so I'd much rather sing along with the professionals.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. I think that's cool that you were able to sing along in harmony, and it seemed like the obvious thing to do. I remember the first time it was an REM song called Night Swimming, which is this beautiful song. And I was listening to it on my MP3 player. I was out for a walk, and I figured out a harmony, and I just kept skipping back again and again and again to sing the same bit over and over and over again, because I was really afraid that I would lose the harmony.
Yeah.
And then when I got home, I went to the piano and figured out what were the actual notes I was singing and what were the notes that Michael Stipe was singing in REM. And go, that sort of makes a bit of a chord, because there's two different notes, but they work together because they're part of the same chord. And then that was the start for me. But that, as soon as I had that harmony, I really didn't want to lose it. I was so afraid that if I stopped listening to the song, it would vanish and I'd forget it and it'd be gone forever.
I don't know where, because I didn't play an instrument. I learned guitar when I was 10, but that wasn't, I didn't really learn much about chords and harmonies and stuff. So I don't know where the harmonization came from. We did loads of singing at school back in the day. It was a really big part of English education that you'd sing at school all the time, but we didn't sing in harmony. So I have no idea where this harmony ability came from. It just seemed to be so obvious.
The following recording is from one of Chris's singing workshops. The song is called Mami Wata, and it's from Burkina Faso. Mami la la la, mami wata la la la. Mami la la la, mami wata la la la. Canta sempre, canta different, canta mami seria, mama bella, okay. Mami la la la, mami wata la la la. Mami la la la, mami wata la la la. Canta sempre, canta different, canta mami seria, mama bella, okay. What aspect of choir leading most excites you?
Uh, I guess the only bit really that excites me is when the song's up and running and they're singing it to me. That's the only reason I do the job because I can't sing harmony on my own. So I need some other people. So I get people to give me money to so I can teach them songs and they can sing to me and I have a nice time. That's basically that's that sums up my career.
Yeah.
But that's the yeah, that listening
Well,
to it at the end is the best bit.
right.
And if people come to my workshops, they see I get very excited and jump around like a little energizer bunny because it just sounds so wonderful. And that's what really excites me. The other
Wow.
bits, not so much because it's kind of the ploddy bit. Um, if I had a magic way that I could just zap the song inside their heads without doing all the other faff of the warm ups and the teaching the song, it'd be brilliant. I just have a live choir in my room singing to me all the time. So
Wow.
the other bits are the necessary um, work, I guess,
Yeah.
for the end result. It's the end result is why I do it.
That's interesting. So you're very goal oriented. Like the goal
Oh yeah,
is
yeah,
when the
yeah,
choir
yeah,
is singing the song to me.
yeah, yeah.
That's fascinating. I Yeah. Do you not take any pleasure in the process of the teaching and the learning? Is that enjoyable?
Um, I've always taught. I'm quite a good teacher, I think, in the sense that I'm quite good at being able to break complicated things down and explain them in quite a simple way.
Well, you
So
must
I
feel
quite
some
enjoy,
satisfaction when that happens, right? When you can
yeah,
take something
yeah.
complex and make it simple.
I enjoy it. I suppose I enjoy it when people get it. Um, so again, that's it's funny because my approach is not goal orientated in a funny sort of way. I don't tell the singers that they're there for the process. The process is the most important thing. Being in a room together with other people as a community, making something together, um, stumbling towards something. But the end product, like coming out with some shiny recording or perfect performance, that's not why we're there. We're there for the process. But the bit that does give me the most pleasure is when people get it and they singing to me and it sounds amazing. That's my reward, I suppose. Although I do enjoy the process because I enjoy kind of inventing warm-ups and finding ways of breaking the song down so it's more understandable and getting people engaged. And I really enjoy seeing people with that aha moment when they think either they can't sing or they can't get the song because it's too complicated, and then it's just coming out of their mouths. And that gives me a lot of pleasure as well. Yeah.
Yeah, good. I was going to say you seem like a natural born teacher, and it would be weird if you didn't also enjoy the teaching process. I feel.
Yeah, but I must admit, there are times when it's been a hard week and I'm a bit tired, when I think, why can't you just sing it without me having to go through all the teachy bit?
Yeah,
But yeah, no, I do. I love teaching. I really enjoy it.
that's wonderful. So that's what most excites you. But what aspect of choir leading do you find most difficult?
Um, um, I did read your questions. Honestly, you sent them to me and I read them, and I thought this is a really hard one. I don't think I'm going to pass this exam because I don't know the answer to this one. Um, I don't. I I don't want to sound arrogant, but I find it quite easy. Um, there are some things there's some bits that are kind of tedious, I suppose, but there's nothing that's really hard. I get incredibly nervous if I'm doing a concert. Um, that bit's difficult. That bit's difficult, I think, for most choir leaders, because in a sense, although I'm not a control freak, we are all control freaks because we're telling people what to do. So when you're in a concert, you have no longer got that control. You can point your finger at people, you can wave your arms around. What comes out of their mouths is what comes out of their mouths. You no
Mm.
longer have any control over it. And that makes me feel very nervous. So I guess that's the hardest bit, which is why I don't do that anymore.
Yeah, so you said that so you used to run a choir that rehearses every week,
Yeah.
but nowadays you mostly do like one-off workshops, is that correct?
Yeah, because I've been doing it for I worked out the other day, 27 years,
Wow.
and quite a few of my colleagues get to that sort of 20, 25 year point of running a regular weekly choir, and they get really tired, or it's not quite bored, but you feel sort of drained. And going along every week, and all the choirs I ran were in the evening. So you come along on a Thursday evening when people have been at work all week, they're tired, they come into the room. Your job is to kind of energize them and feed them and get them excited and put these songs in their heads, which takes a huge amount of energy. Somebody once said to me, they're like vampires, they suck your energy out. And it's true, if you've done your job well at the end of the evening, it's exhausting. And I discovered this really strange thing because I started doing these 6 week projects. I was asked by a festival years ago to make a choir just for the festival. So 6 weeks, we learned about 8 songs in 6 rehearsals, and then we did a public performance. So it was brilliant. It was kind of get in, do it, get out, finished. And what was amazing is that the singers learnt the songs quite fast. They performed them brilliantly, and then they completely forgot them all. Whereas if you're in a regular weekly choir, you almost done the song, and then next week you have to do it again. And then what happens the following week is that people think, oh, maybe I didn't get the second verse right. Or does it go up there or does it go down? And the song starts to fall apart. And then week 3, you have to bring it back again and it falls apart even more. And then week 4, you're trying really hard and people are overthinking and it's almost back to what it was in week 1. And week 5, so you got this, it's really hard work. Whereas in the short 6 week project, people learnt the song and sung it without before the time that their brain came in to say, am I actually getting this right? Is it that easy? So I found that really, really hard work. To do that over 25 years, there was one point where I had 3 community choirs and they all had different repertoires. The kind of Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday every week. And because I think you run 3 choirs, don't you?
I do, yeah. Tuesday, Wednesday,
And
Thursday.
I just found it after 25 years, it was um, hard work compared with shorter one-off projects.
Mm. Yeah, the maintenance of songs week to week
Yeah,
um, is something that uh, yeah, it stresses me out a bit because the singers sometimes, well, in my experience, a lot of singers they think they know stuff, but they're not hearing it from out the front, and I hear it, and I'm like, "You guys have forgotten so much of this song. Like
yeah,
it was
yeah.
so perfect last week, and didn't you practice at home?" So yeah, but with the workshops, the short one-off workshops, they that seems like you're hijacking the like the fresh memory. Things are more exciting when they're fresh, aren't they? There's this
It,
game designer guy called Mark Rosewater who's fantastic, and he talks about the hash brown effect, which he says the outside of the hash brown is crispy and golden, it's crunchy and salty and delicious. The inside of the hash brown is just bland potato, it's
okay,
fine.
yeah, yeah.
And so it's like the first bite of the hash brown is the delicious, like, oh, that's the best moment, and it's all just downhill from there.
But it's more than that. Somebody who used to do quite a few of these 6 week projects explained it to me once. He said that we're going to learn 8 songs in 6 rehearsals. There is no way we are going to be perfect. Absolutely no way we're going to be perfect. We're going to stumble through. So everybody lets go of the idea of having to be perfect and having to get it right. Having let go of that idea, they end up being perfect and getting it right. Now, if you're in a regular weekly choir, you know that you're going to go through a period of hard work and gradually build up a song until it's shiny and perfect. And it's going to take quite a long time. But in a shorter project, you just let go of that possibility and you allow yourself, by getting your thinking brain out of the way, to learn in a much better way, I think.
Hmm. This is an interesting concept. Yeah. Cool. Much more discussion needed. I want to hear from other choir leaders what they think about this. I partly agree, and then I partly disagree because I think,
Okay.
yeah, like I agree that that there is something about that early part of the process that if everyone's full of possibility and excitement, and yeah, the nerves haven't set in, or as you said, like the anxious part of the brain hasn't turned on yet, as because they're not yet daunted, perhaps, or second guessing, the second guessing part of the brain, and then. But then, for me personally, I find like some of the songs I enjoy singing the most are the ones that I have practiced the most, that I know most deeply, because I feel
Okay.
like I can employ all of my skill because the notes are so embedded. I don't have to think about the notes anymore. So there's that. That's the other side of the coin for me.
Well, there are two kinds of people, and I'm the other kind. There are people I know who love rehearsing and they love refining and they love going over the song again and again and again, and they go deeper and deeper and deeper. And over many months and years, the song is really embedded inside of them. Then there are people like me who are impatient, got a low tolerance threshold, get bored very quickly. I just want to move on. I hate rehearsing. I just love singing songs. So I have to find that balance between polishing it and getting it sounding right. But I'm not the sort of person that will go on and on and on, plugging and plugging and plugging away and refining it, I suppose.
Yeah, it's a different part of the art, part of the discipline. Yeah, perhaps we should team up and then we'll have a super choir. I'm going to read from one of Chris's blog posts. So this is Chris has a blog, wonderful blog called "From the Front of the Choir," and I'm going to read one of the blog posts. Here are 7 terrible things that might happen to you if you start singing. Number 1, singing can become addictive. Once you start singing, it's very hard to stop. It's such an enjoyable activity that you will start noticing it everywhere and begin to take every opportunity you can to sing. Number 2, singing takes up valuable time. You start by joining a choir once a week, then you do concerts at the weekends, then all those social events, and that great weekend workshop. Before you know it, it's taken over your whole life. 3, you will abandon your friends and family and spend more time with your new singing chums and on the tour bus and in the pub after the concert and after weekly rehearsals. You'll be listening to more CDs on your own, checking out YouTube videos, learning lyrics, etc. No time left for family and friends at all. Number 4, you will become unbearable to live with. Singing makes you so happy that you will wear a constant smile and be humming all day long in a state of bliss, much to the annoyance of everyone you live with, who will be insanely jealous. Number 5, singing stops you from sleeping. After rehearsal or performance, you will be so buoyed up with enthusiasm and joy that you will find it hard to come down off cloud 9. Not only that, but you'll have all those wonderful tunes bouncing around inside your head. Sleep, who needs it? Number 6, you will spend more money. Nice new costume for the next gig, more CDs, songbooks, weekend workshops, maybe even a musical instrument. Number 7, you might lose your job. For some people, singing takes over their lives entirely, and they end up singing the whole time. They turn professional or start leading a choir of their own, and before they know it, they have a new career. So, be warned. Approach singing with caution. Once you start, you might not be able to stop. And it's like a virus, which you can easily pass on to someone else. Remain alert at all times in case the bug gets you. I just love that, Chris. So, why did you start writing articles about choir topics?
Um, I wanted it to be a discussion, really. I wanted to figure out what I thought about something, and I had naively hoped that people would leave loads of comments and we'd have a kind of dialogue, and I'd be able to learn new things and find out what other people thought of the things that I thought. But it turns out that you kind of write into a vacuum and you have no idea whether anyone's reading it or anyone's listening to it. In the early days, there used to be a few comments, but they're few and far between now. But I do bump into people who say, "Oh, I really like your blog. I read it every week." And I said, "Well, why didn't you tell me? Because it'd be quite nice to know." So it started off as just a way of me trying to figure out what I thought about choir things. Um, and because I'm really lazy and impatient, I thought if I set myself a deadline and told the world that I would be writing one every week, I would have to stick to it. And for some strange reason, I have managed to stick to it, even when I think I've run out of ideas of what to write about. And it has helped me. Um, the act of writing it down and thinking about something. Um, Sometimes people ask me questions that I hadn't thought about, and I think about what I think about it, and it enables me to mull it over in my head. That's what the writing process does for me, basically.
I love that. I think it's a shame that people aren't commenting enough. I'll hop on and comment a few times for you if you like. Um, yeah, I love it. That's part of the reason this podcast exists too, is to although sometimes it feels like shouting into the void, it is
Mhm.
like trying to stimulate conversation about choir leading, what it means to lead a choir well. And it turns out there's many different ways to do that. And everybody's a little bit different. But what's interesting to me is the differences. Do you know what I mean? Like the way you think about things. There's tons of things that you have written about in your blogs that I agree with, and that I just couldn't. I saw a couple of titles and I just couldn't not click on it because I was like, oh, I've thought about this. What does Chris think about it? Um, in one of your articles, which I want to bring up now, you say you answer the question or address the question: why is it important for choir leaders to put themselves in the singer's shoes every so often? So, can you tell us why is it important?
This came out of the fact that I love being a punter in a workshop. I'm a very good punter because I just do what I'm told. A lot of my colleagues are always in the back of their head thinking, "Oh, I wouldn't do it like that," or "They've got that wrong," or "That's not how I would teach it." But I'm a really good punter. I just go. The leader tells me what to do, and I do it, and it's great. No responsibility, and I get to sing. It happens too rarely because I'm often working on the weekends, and that's where most workshops are. But of late, I've managed to go to about three workshops in consecutive weeks, pretty much. So it's been a long time since I've been in that position of being taught a song in harmony and learning by ear. And I found it quite difficult, actually. By the second workshop, I got better at it. Uh, and I started to realize that as choir leaders, we're asking our singers to do certain things and put themselves in certain positions. We're also trying to find ways of making that easier for them. So, being on the receiving end of that, I was able to firsthand experience what are the hard bits, what made me struggle, which bits the choir leader did that would help me, what I wished they had done that would have helped me even more. So, having experienced being a punter, or effectively you're a singer in your own choir in a way, helped me be a better choir leader because then when I went back and worked with singers, I had a um, much more empathy for what they were going through and what I was asking them to do.
I love everything you said there. I agree with all of that. And I felt that myself recently when uh, I realized that I was getting like a high dose of being the boss at choir rehearsal and zero dose of being a singer in a choir. And so, with my one free night, I decided to go and join a choir, which was led by my dear friend Olivia, and she's awesome. And I stole a bunch of ideas from her because she has a really smart rehearsal techniques, and she's a great at choosing repertoire. She chooses the most fascinating, interesting repertoire. Um, and I remembered what it was like to be standing, say, in the tenor section and hearing stuff that I I guess that the choir leader at the front couldn't hear. Like there were details, this a little rhythm that was off. Did the leader notice that? The tenors are flat, and I'm pretty sure I'm correct, but everybody else is flat around me.
Yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah.
and all those little things, and then remembering that okay, I know what it's like out the front, and I know that the conductor is listening to the big picture, and often just addressing the biggest problem at the moment. And so I had to. There was a trust that developed a little bit more after I was in the choir, in the a punter, as you say, in the choir. The other thing that I realized I loved was when the choir leader asked for opinions or comments from the singers and said, let's say like they just run through the piece, and then the choir leader says, "How do we feel that first run went?" And my hand would just shoot up and it'd be like, "Well, it was pretty good, except in bar 79, this went wrong." You know what I mean? And just to have my voice heard and just a little forum where I could just make a comment or two is lovely. It's just lovely to be felt like I'm being heard from out the front. Um, and I know what it's like on both sides, but yeah, it is so refreshing to get to be a punter again and to remind yourself what it's like to be in the singer's shoes. You learn so much.
Yeah, from the musical side, as you're saying, so sort of example, you could be thinking, why hasn't the choir leader realized that our section haven't quite got it yet?
Yeah.
They've moved on, but we haven't quite got it. Should I put my hand up and say, can we go over that again? Or am I interfering? And on a more prosaic level, there's also those things about what it's like to walk into a room of strangers that you've never sung with before.
Mm.
Who do you talk to in the break? Where do you stand? Which part do you belong to? Um, what's the kind of culture of this choir? How do they behave? All those sort of things, because we don't put ourselves in the position of a newcomer, and it's very easy for us choir leaders to forget if we bring a handful of new people on at the beginning of a new season that for them it might be like going back to school, and they feel really uncomfortable. So if we put ourselves in those awkward positions, it can make us feel more empathic, I guess.
That's a really important point. I know at my choirs, I'm often so busy preparing for this beginning of the rehearsal, like setting things up, writing the plan on the whiteboard, getting my music in order, etc., 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 that I personally don't have a lot of time to talk to new people. As much as I would love to do it, I just don't have the time. Fortunately, with like the choirs that I work with, there's a membership coordinator in 2 out of 3 choirs, and in the other one, it's just full of lots of friendly committee members as well. So when new people wander in, they're often greeted like warmly by somebody and just kind of shown the ropes. Like, oh, you're a bass. Oh, you should stand over here. Or meet John. He's a bass. He'll show you what to do. Just pairing people up or finding them where to sit and giving them some sheet music if we use sheet music, and yeah, just generally making people feel welcome. That is such an important thing. And yeah, I have walked into rehearsals before, and I thought I may as well be a ghost because nobody's paying any attention to me, and it feels a bit alienating,
Yeah,
really. Like
yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know if I want to come back.
So
So,
when you were asking about why I maybe prefer the one-off things,
mm,
I'm a little bit mischievous. And there's something you can do with the one-off things is that there is no culture. There is no choir culture. All you have
mm.
is a room with a bunch of strangers. A few individuals might know each other with a bunch of strangers. So sometimes I've sat down with people and they don't know who I am. So I have a chat with them, where have you come from? Have you sung before? What do you think this guy's going to be like? We have a little chat. Um, then other time, I love my favorite phrase is, I don't know, when people say should that be an F sharp, I don't know. I don't know what an F sharp is, or should that be a third above? I have no idea. Just sing this bit. And then when people say, so where should I stand? I'm a soprano. I don't know. I have no idea. And often in a one-off, people do it themselves. Sometimes everyone stands in a circle. So I kind of go, okay, well, we're working in a circle today. Other times people might put seats out in rows. And I go, okay, well, we'll work in rows today. And it's that. it's that lovely eggy moment where everybody's a little unsure. Nobody really knows what's happening. Even if people have worked with me before, they've got no idea what songs we're doing. And it's a magic space that you can tap into people's imagination and uncertainty. It turns their intellect off. They get rid of all their baggage and expectations that they've got. Oh, I'm a soprano. I'm soprano too. And I go, well, I don't know what that means because we don't use those words here. You just stand over there if you want to sing the high bit. And it's sort of it levels the playing field in a way, I suppose, which is one of the other things I love about choirs is it's completely level playing field. You don't need to know. That's why I don't do introduction name game things. People get to know each other in the tea break because everybody is equal. All they're doing is contributing their voice. So I love playing with that eggy moment, which you can't do in a regular weekly choir because there is a culture, whether you think there is or not, that's kind of established over time.
I love that. I love that. I have a few questions. Can you explain the phrase "eggy moment"? I don't think that's one that
Sorry,
I that I know.
eggy moment. What's an eggy moment is something like you don't really know what's going on. You're not really sure. I don't know why it's called an eggy moment. That's an interesting question. Um,
Is it like the bit when you're cooking
I
something
don't
and you
know.
crack an
It's
egg
a
and it's not the egg hasn't
yeah.
like
I don't know. It's kind of you're not quite sure where the egg's going. It flows all over the place, and you don't know where it's going to set. I don't know. Something like that. It's it's a moment of unknown and uncertainty. It's in a moment in which anything can happen. You have to let go of your expectations because nobody knows what's going on.
yeah.
And I sort of pretend that I don't know what's going on either. So we're all in the same boat, but something's going to happen. Um, I used to work a lot in theatre, and my model is sort of I know how to read a map. I know how to use a compass. Um, I've got a bit of equipment with me, but I've got no idea where we're going. But we're not going to get lost because I've got a certain set of skills. So I don't know what's going on. And it puts people's heads in a really interesting space that they kind of go, oh, so I'll just let go of any expectations now, whatever. I thought I came here for this, but I have no idea what's going on now. And they become far more amenable to learning stuff and trying new things and letting go of their inhibitions in that space. And that's a magic moment that lasts for about an hour, I suppose.
That is so fascinating. Yeah, you do sound like you're a pretty cheeky and contrarian kind of workshop leader to my, from what you describe. I like the idea that sometimes it's a circle, sometimes it's in rows, and you don't plan for it. You just let them
Yeah,
self-organize.
yeah. It's what outsourcing, isn't it? Crowdsourcing.
Yeah.
You without asking people, things sort of happen. I remember there was once I was teaching at a drama school, and it was the morning. I'm not a morning person. I think I might have mentioned that. And I was really grumpy because a lot of the students were late. So I was standing in the corner looking really mean and grumpy and not saying anything. And gradually all the students had arrived. I was about to start the session. But what happened was the students started their own warm-up. Then they started doing some of the exercises we'd done before. And before I knew it, the whole session was going on because they thought that that's what I wanted. And it was brilliant. And I hadn't set it up and I hadn't told them to do anything. I just kind of stood there with my grumpy face on. And in the same way, you just stand there and kind of go, I don't know how we're going to work today or what's going to happen. And it will just evolve. And whatever happens, it's fine.
Here's a recording of Searching for Lambs, which is an English folk song.
As I walked out one May morning betime, I met a maid from home astray, just as the sun did shine. What makes you rise so soon, my dear? Your journey to pursue. Your brilliant feet, they tread so neat, strike off the morning dew.
Have you heard of the open space technology?
No, please tell me.
It's I don't know where it originates from, but it's I don't fully understand it. It's quite a complicated thing, but it's basically about when groups of people get together, how to have uh, discussions, how to work together, how to collaborate as a group of strangers. But one of the principles is this is the right place, and these are the right people. And however they're going to set the chairs out or stand up is the right way of doing things. And that's what's going to happen today. Rather than you coming in and imposing what you want to happen on a bunch of people who maybe don't want to do that. So you kind of allow that space and you just go with it, and it can evolve into something. You can nudge it and you can guide it, but it kind of comes from them rather than you imposing it from the outside, if that makes sense.
That's an interesting mindset shift, isn't it? This is the right space, these are the right people. That immediately just thinking like those two facts, or taking those two things to be true, puts me in a different frame of mind. Yeah, cool.
There are times when I've worked in a space, unbeknownst to me, when I've arrived, it's got pillars right in the middle, holding the roof up. It's
Right,
like,
yeah.
I wanted an open space, but you've got pillars. And instead of the 30 singers that I expected, 5 came. And in the past, my heart would have sunk. I would have got really upset and miserable, thinking, I want to do my plan of 30 people in a big wide open space, but I've only got 5 and I've got bloody pillars. If you use that thing about these are the right people, this is the right space, you go, great, pillars. How can we use the pillars? And I've only got 5 people. Brilliant. We can do some really detailed work. And I can maybe stand one person next to each pillar and we can have the harmonies at a distance. I don't know. And I get excited. But if I'd have still carried that baggage of I expected 30 singers in a big open space with some chairs, I would have been disappointed and frustrated, and the work wouldn't have been as good.
So the ability to improvise with what you've got, you think is a pretty important skill for a choir leader?
It's not improvising as such as acceptance. It's accepting what's in front of you rather than coming with your fixed ideas. So you come to rehearsal and you've made your rehearsal plan, and it involves quite a bit of extra work with the basses this week, and maybe the sopranos can do this. And you come in that week, most of the basses are off sick, and the sopranos are in a bad mood or something, and you've got loads of altos, more than you'd expected. And if you try and fit your predetermined plan on it, you're not accepting the situation. So it's not about improvisation. It's just, you have to remind yourself of what's in front of you. If you have this amazing idea for a fantastic, complicated song and you try it with your choir and it keeps falling apart, if you keep plugging away week after week after week, it might be better to accept that that's not the choir you thought they were. Work with it's like people who buy an arrangement and insist on teaching it to their choir when actually it's out of range of most of the sections, and the arrangement is not right for the choir. You should see your choir and group of singers for who they are and work with that rather than trying to impose on them, because you will get upset and disappointed and frustrated, and they will get frustrated because they're not going to be able to achieve what they think you want. So it's not improvisation as much as acceptance, I think.
That's cool. That's a great term. Yeah. It reminds me of a quote, and I can't remember who I got it from. It might be a Rodney Eichenberger quote or something, but it's just teach the choir in front of you. Don't
Exactly.
assume they're going to be something else or expect them to be something else. They are what they are, and you got to meet them where they're at, where maybe a very high level, maybe a very low level, maybe a mixture. It's probably going to be a mixture, actually.
Yeah.
And you just got to teach them to where they're at. So, planning that. So, do you, presumably you go in with some sort of plan, you go in with the songs in mind that you're going to teach, but you sound like you aim to be flexible.
I'm quite a meticulous planner, actually. Um, I always plan the warm up in detail. I have a really rubbish memory, um, so I have to write everything down on a piece of paper. So I have the warm up planned in detail. I give it a lot of thought beforehand. I have the songs in mind that I'm going to teach and the order in which I'm going to teach them. And I have a couple of spare songs in case we get through things or they find something difficult. Um, and the thing about planning is you have to have a plan, but you need to be able to abandon it at a moment's notice.
Mm.
The strange thing is, though, that you can have a really, really detailed plan and you can walk into a room and for whatever reason, maybe the power has failed or half your singers haven't turned up or something, you completely throw that plan out and do something else. But if you hadn't made that plan, it would all go wrong. If you walk in without any plan whatsoever, I don't think it works. So you have to have a plan of some sort, even if
Mm.
you abandon it in the first few minutes.
Mm.
So yes, I do plan in quite some detail and being very anal, or you could call it organized, I have all those pieces of paper from all the workshops I've ever run. So I
Ah.
can go back and I can remind myself of old warm-up exercises. And I can also try and make sure that I don't teach the same songs in the same town.
Mm.
If you get a people who come round for dinner once a year, they will remember what you served them, but you won't. So if every year they come and you give them spaghetti bolognese, they're going to get a bit miffed, aren't they? So if a singer comes to you once a year, one of your
Mm.
workshops, and you always teach the same song, so I try and keep records.
That's very
So it's
thoughtful.
that balance. It's that balance between being super organized and structured and having plans, plus being able to see what's in front of you, work with what you've got, and be flexible and be able to improvise.
That's great. And you don't want to become known as the spaghetti bolognese choir leader.
No,
He's always teaching
exactly.
that same old spaghetti
Yeah.
bolognese song.
I've only ever learned one song from this guy. Every time I go back, it's the same song.
Yeah, that's very thoughtful of you, and I think, yeah, I think I've run into stuff like that before, where the workshop teacher, it seems like they're a one trick pony. They always just teach the same thing. Um, you mentioned a warm up. What kind of things do you like to include in your warm up?
Um, my ideal warm-up exercises try to involve all the elements. So breathing, making a sound, vocalizing of some sort, engaging your body, and engaging your imagination. So ideally, every exercise I do has all those elements in it. So if you look up warm-ups, if you were to Google warm-ups, you would get loads of what are called vocalizers, which are little riffs that you teach to prepare somebody's voice. But you seldom hear about all the other stuff you need. If somebody comes in after a hard day's work, sitting at a desk all day, walking into a room, and you whack straight into some kind of vocalized thing, you need to get people to move from the outside real world into a world of imagination and imaginative space where amazing things can happen and you can be creative. You want to tap into people's creative mind. You want them to be relaxed physically and relaxed in their mind so they're not anxious. You want to deepen people's breathing as well as calming them down. You want to start to engage the vocal mechanism, make some gentle sounds. But if you do that separately, people tend to then compartmentalize it in their heads. And when they come to sing, they're only using one part of their singing mechanism, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So it was breath, voice, body, and imagination. Those were the.
Yeah, yeah, something like that.
Can you? I can think I can understand how you would do breath, voice, and body. Can you explain something you would do to spark the imagination or use the
Well,
imagination?
I'm very not technical, very, very not technical. I don't respond to technical descriptions of the vocal apparatus. It doesn't help me at all personally. I come from a theatre background, a kind of physical theatre background. So I'm very used to engaging body and voice connected with each other. And the way that you can enable that is to use visual imagery. So that's where the imagination comes in. I ask people to imagine that they are reaching up to, I don't know, to reaching up to hold the sun or something, and then it gets too hot. So I don't know, whatever. But trying to engage vivid visual imagination so that people end up engaging their body and breath and voice in the way that you want them to without them really thinking about it or being technical. They're just they're playing in a sense. They're playing. They're using their body, they're using their arms, they're using the space, they're using their breath in a playful way because you're talking about visual imagery all the time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. And so are you getting them to sing while they're doing this? So are you saying like we're singing and we're pretending we're reaching for the sun or something like that?
Yes, yes. So
Like you're not simply just describing things for them to imagine, you're
no,
getting
no,
them to
no.
do
So
something while
for
they do it.
example, there's a really simple. I do a lot of stuff that's quite childlike because I want to engage people's childlike imagination and playfulness and fun. So there's one where I kind of say, and today, children, we're going to be little seedlings. And we're going to use our hands like this. And as the little seedling grows, it stretches up towards the light and the sun. And when it reaches the top, our arms open as the flower opens. And I'd be a little bit patronizing, a little bit silly. And everyone hopefully gets it, taps into their 4-year-old self. And they're doing something like, ooh, some simple little riff that's quite gentle at the same time as engaging their body and their breath by using their imagination. So you get them, they will stretch a little bit higher than if you just said, just stretch. And it's an easier way to engage all those elements by describing it as a visual metaphor than to try and say, so you're actually engaging your breath at the same time as you're opening your back and you're stretching your arms towards the ceiling. And we're also singing these little 7 notes in a row. And we're also doing that, which becomes very, very technical. If you just say we're a little seed and we're reaching up for the sun, and I want you to, and as the sun comes out, it's a very happy feeling. So I want you to smile as you're making that ooh sound. So you can slip all these technical elements in about tone and gently engaging the voice without being technical and boring. It still becomes fun. And people become much more engaged in it as well when they're being playful.
I love that. I love that. I think you've obviously got a strength with the in your theatre background, and I'm thinking there's more and more possibilities in the future for choir and theatre to overlap. I think it is happening more and more, and I'd love to do it more. And just as you were describing that exercise, like I was thinking, okay, if I was doing that, I'd be singing at a sort of soft volume, and I'd be singing with a gentle tone, and I'd be doing this physicality thing with my body, and I didn't need to. It's only after the fact that I was able to articulate all of those changes that I was making, because that's just what I would do in the moment. I would just do it without thinking about it, or maybe crucially without overthinking it, and and second guessing myself. Would just do it because we're playing a little game, and yeah, I think it's important also to, as you established earlier, create that safe environment where everybody feels that they can just be a little bit silly because we're playing a little game right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think some people have a real gift.
I tried to say at the beginning, this might feel a bit silly, but this is your chance. It's just a Saturday. You're not at work. It's a chance to be 4 years old again and have fun. And we're all in the same boat. We're all going to be 4 years old. And I kind of play it up a little bit, like being the school teacher or whatever.
Yeah.
But I do also try and say that there is a very good reason for doing all these things. You have to trust me, because if I were to explain for each individual exercise the technical reason why we're doing it, we'd be here all day doing the warm-up. Well, actually, the warm-up is to get us into singing. So you've just got to trust me on this, that I've thought this through, and there's a very good reason for doing these things. It's not just to make you silly, although that does amuse me, but it has a very good reason as well.
The following is a recording of Dio vi salvi regina from Corsica. It is a 16th century hymn to the Virgin Mary.
Dio vi salvi regina, et mare universale, et qui famosi
If your singers were listening to this, what's one thing that you would want them to know?
I read this question too, and that's a really hard one. I don't know what I'd want them to know, because I think, again, in my work, I'm very open. I share with people what I want them to know in the moment, I guess. So I can't really answer that question, because I don't think I hold that back. They would know what I'd want them to know because I've told them.
Well, that's good. No secrets from your singers. That's lovely. What could a singer do if they really want to annoy you?
That's another one. You asked some difficult questions, Dan, didn't you? I remember reading these, thinking these are really hard. I've done my practice. There's not a lot that annoys me, actually, if I'm absolutely honest. I get a lot of people who come up to me and say, "Oh my God, you're so patient. You are so patient, because we were being a bit naughty today and we couldn't get it right." And, they would expect you to get cross or whatever. And you say, "You're so patient." And my response to that is, well, what's the alternative? What am I going to do? Get cross? Get stressed? How is that going to help anybody? So, because I'm patient, and also when I'm teaching, I'm very focused, there's not much that a singer can do that will annoy me, because either I won't notice. I'm sure you get this. A lot of people come up to me and say, "Everyone's talking in my section when you're trying to explain things, or when you're teaching one of the other parts. Everyone's talking. Can you ask them to shut up?" And I go, I didn't notice, because I was working. I was focusing. I didn't notice all the talking. So talking doesn't annoy me, because I don't really notice it. I suppose somebody asking lots of questions all the time, having those sort of people in your choir is not terribly helpful if they're doing that whilst you're trying to learn a song. I'm very happy to answer questions outside the break, but there are some people, um, individuals over the years who ask questions all the time, and you kind of think, can you just switch your brain off for like half an hour and just do the thing? Because that'll be much more helpful to you than trying to think so much. So that can be quite annoying, I guess. But the rest of it doesn't, no, not really.
Well, I think the person who asks tons of questions, the problem there is that they're interrupting the flow, isn't it?
Yeah.
That the flow of the rehearsal is so important. And we mentioned earlier about being in the singer's shoes, and when I was singing with Olivia's choir, Compactus, occasionally I would have this is a good question to ask, but I'm just watching Olivia carefully and saying, I think she's sort of like, she's on a good roll here. She's got a good flow going. And I probably just should save my question and wait, bite it. Just wait, because I think it's just going to slow things down and bog it down when we've got such momentum right now.
And that
But I
balance,
mean,
you said that she asked the singers
oh,
at
yeah,
various
sorry.
points for the feedback. So that balance is great, isn't it? So you knew that there was the opportunity at some point to ask a question.
Yeah, I didn't link those two things together, but yes, I suppose if the choir leader is making opportunities for input, then you can you know that that's there. There will be a time where I can ask my question. I guess it's the uncertainty if the singer's like, should I raise this now, or if I don't raise it now, will it ever get fixed? You know what I mean? The tenors are still singing a B flat when it should be a B natural. Is it ever going to get fixed if I don't raise my hand right now? So yeah, it's a hard thing to know, and like I have a slightly more insight into it because I've been out the front of the choir, and I recognize when you've got good flow going, you want to keep that going and going. You don't want to interrupt.
But that's a really interesting point. Why does it bother you, Dan, that they're singing a B natural instead of a B flat? Because if you were out the front, you might not have noticed that. And everyone's having a good time, and the overall sound is great. But if you were to go and infiltrate the tenors, you might find that some of them are singing the wrong note. Why is that such a bad thing?
Well, because I'm a control freak and I like to. I
Ah,
know that the B natural will actually make the chord correct and it'll
I
sound better.
see. Okay. For whom? For whom?
For everybody, not just me.
I tell you what I found really hard when I went to this workshop, and I don't know the answer to this. So using your example, if I was singing with tenors, I'm singing the B natural, but the other three guys standing next to me are singing a B flat. And I'm finding it really hard to hold the B natural because they're singing the wrong note. It's not my job to tell them they're singing the wrong note. That's the choir leader's job. But I'm finding it really, really hard to sing my part when there's some other guys in that section who are not singing it correctly. In this particular instance, I knew that the person leading the workshop realized that the tenor section wasn't absolutely 100% correct, but he was okay enough under the circumstances. And I'm very happy to accept that, the overall sound. We weren't working towards a performance or anything. But as a singer trying to learn my part and to hold on to it, I was being put off by the people who were not getting the right note. I didn't know what to do in that circumstance. And I don't really know if you're the choir leader and you either don't spot it or it's not that disruptive, how you can help those people that are getting it right, because they might be in the minority, the ones getting it right.
Yeah, I think what I try to do, because this kind of thing happens all the time. There's a couple of very beautifully diplomatic people in my choirs, and when they notice note discrepancies like that, there's this lovely bloke called Mike who sings bass, and he's a very accurate singer. And he says, he just puts his hand up and says, Dan, can you just sing bar 7 and 8 for us, the bass part, because I'm not sure I've got it. And now I'm pretty sure Mike does have it. Pretty sure Mike, he knows. But he's just knows that the section needs clarification. So that's one way to do it. If this is like advice for a singer, if something's bothering you and you want to diplomatically get it corrected from the authority figure out the front, that's one way to do it. And then the other thing is, if you're the choir leader, you notice discrepancy in a part. Let's say it's the same bass part, but nobody's said anything. But you've noticed it. You could go like, basses, there's this one little tricky bit, and some of you are getting it right, and well done you for getting it right, because it is really tricky, but it goes like this, and then you demonstrate, and then it just allows the guys who were getting it wrong to save face and not have to be outed and say, you, John, you got it wrong.
Yeah.
But Mike was good. That's one way around it. I mean, it does require you to have that, 30 seconds to fix that problem, and also that you noticed it. And also that it was a high enough priority to be worth fixing. I have a question here that was from the previous guest on the show, Jono Albertini. He said, if you could magically bestow one musical skill or trait upon every member of your group overnight, what would it be and why?
To be able to listen more loudly than they sing. An example of that is a guy who has attended quite a few of my singing weekends and one-day workshops, and he has quite a powerful voice, and it takes him a little while to get it. When he's got it, it's great. We did some detailed work in one workshop, and he came up to me and said, it's just suddenly clicked. If I can hear all the other harmonies, it makes my job much easier to get my part right. And it sounds amazing. And it's like, yeah, I know I've been telling you that for years, but he suddenly had this dawning, this realization, and it lasted 10 minutes. And then he went back to singing loud again. And you think that was such a huge understanding for him. And he realized that it helped him, and he realized that it gave him much, much more pleasure because he could actually hear all the other parts and how they blended together. And yet he let go of that very quickly because of habit or whatever, because he stopped listening. And the listening carries right across from, I need to listen to what the person up front is saying, to I need to listen to people in my own section, to I really need to listen out so I can hear the other three harmonies. And I really need to listen to make sure that I'm not talking when somebody's explaining something. And I think listening is the most important thing. I mean, that's another thing that is good to put into the warm-up, because we're such a visual society. When people come from a hard day at work and they stand in a room, they're not used to listening. They're used to talking maybe and reading, but to actually stop and listen to the silence and listen to each other. So listening is the most important thing for me. That's what I wish by magic they could all hold on to, really. I did bash it into them, but to hold on to that understanding.
That's wonderful. Wonderful. I agree. And I had this reinforced again recently too. Because I'm a confident singer, and when I am singing as one of the punters in the choir or at a workshop, when I've got my part and I'm certain of it, I tend to sing it pretty strong, because I'm like, I've got this and I can help other people if I'm singing strongly. But that does mean that I turn off my listening, or at least turn it down. So I'm being less reactive when I need to dial up the reactiveness a little bit. And this was reinforced recently when, so I mentioned before I sing barbershop harmony, and we had our national barbershop festival on the Gold Coast earlier this year, and they brought out a guest quartet called Lemon Squeezy, who are from Sweden, and they are terrific. They're just incredible singers. And they do this little event called Sing with the Champs. So you can hop up there and just swap out with one of the members and sing a song that they know. And so I got up there and I sang the baritone part for this simple little song called Heart of My Heart. And it was amazing because like it was so easy to sing with them because they're so good. They're just nailing the notes all the way through. And I'm like, wow, my job feels so much easier and it's delightful. But also I noticed that they don't sing very loudly. They just sing really in tune and they really listen to each other really closely and they're so in sync and they are very obviously kind of like reacting moment to moment to moment to moment to moment. To every millisecond, they are listening to what's going on and making the tiniest little micro adjustments as they go so that they're always locked in with each other. And then I was like, oh yeah, of course in the past I knew this to be true, but then I must have sort of forgotten it. I started singing in the old way again. And then it all came crashing back and I was like, oh yeah, I should probably teach my choirs to do this a bit more and structure some like parts of the rehearsal or exercises where we actively listen in that way.
I tell you, there's a brilliant way of finding out or demonstrating to your choir that they're not really listening is you just turn all the lights out mid-song. And 9 times out of 10, it would just stop. And then you stop, turn the lights on and talk to them about listening and said, well, why did you stop? And why did it all go wrong? Because I turned the lights out. And then the next time you turn the lights out, it's brilliant because all they can do is listen. They can't see each other. They can just listen. And for me, this thing about singing loudly, I love harmony. So I never sing too loudly because I'm always physically also turning so I can get my ear nearer the other parts because I get the joy from hearing the harmonies. And if I can only hear my own voice, I may as well stay at home, sing on my own. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's why we're all there, isn't it? To experience harmony. I mean that's why I'm there at least.
Yep.
What do you look for in a new piece of music? I'm asking for a composer/arranger friend.
Okay. The easy answer is I don't do new music, I guess. The vast majority of our repertoire are traditional songs from cultures across the world, many of which I arrange myself. And if I am going to do some new music, it's usually because I've learnt it in a workshop myself. I've been exposed to it. And that's what a great song that is. I'm not very good at making things come alive by seeing the sheet music. And sometimes just by listening to recording doesn't do it. But if I'm in the room and someone teaches a song to me and it's a new piece of music, I know that that's great and I will take it away with me. But most of the time I don't go hunting for new stuff.
Of the songs that do catch your ear, what is it? Can you draw a through line to some of the things that you like about those songs? Is it the lyrical content? Is it the rhythm?
I am so not a lyric person. So not a lyric person. I'm not interested in the lyrics, really. Occasionally when I see them written down, I think, oh, it's quite a nice bit of poetry. But I love the sounds, which is why I sing songs from a lot of other cultures, because for me, the meaning and the emotion of the song is conveyed in the sounds, in the vowel sounds and in the melodies and the harmonies. So, some of my favorite music is from places like Georgia, where maybe they have one word or maybe 2 words, but it's just, it's to die for. And the emotional content is absolutely extraordinary. So if a new piece of music hits me, it's usually because it's got some really interesting, clashy sort of harmonies. And it's not the lyrics, it's the harmonization. And it's the emotional content. If it moves me, so I can't I won't know until I sing it or hear it that it touches me emotionally.
Hmm. It sounds like you can be moved by a piece of music that you don't know the meaning of the lyrics to. If it's in a language that you don't speak and you hear it, but you feel something, um, something stirring emotionally, even and that maybe that's driven by the harmonies more so than an understanding of the text.
But for me, a good song, a great song, conveys its meaning and emotion through the sounds rather than the meaning of the individual words. So the meaning, if the song's in English, we'd understand it, but it's kind of secondary. It adds an extra layer, but it's not needed, because if it's a well-written song that's well arranged, it will get its message across by the music and the sounds that it makes rather than the meaning of the word. You can tell a bad song is because it has usually too many words, and it's relying on the meaning of the words. And you think, well, just read it as a poem. Why turn it into a song? Poems and song lyrics are two completely different things in my mind. And some song lyrics, when you see them written down, are kind of banal, but because of the sounds of the words and the vowels and the music, that's where the meaning and the emotion comes from. For me, anyway.
Yeah, you've reminded
And
me
I
of.
have a colleague who has no understanding of that. Absolutely no understanding. They come from the complete other end of the spectrum, and it's all about the lyrics, and they don't understand how I function or understand music at all.
Yeah, yeah, it's an interesting sort of uh, dichotomy between people who are attracted to the music, the lyrics. It's often like it's one or the other for a lot of people. You reminded me about a couple of things. Lyrics versus not lyrics, or song lyrics kind of looking kind of dumb when they're written down, but sounding great. I remember I got a Paul McCartney album and opened the little, this is on a CD, opened the little lyric booklet and was reading through it as I was listening to the music for the first time. That was a mistake. Because his lyrics, well, at least on this particular album, not very impressive on paper. Underwhelming, even. But great songs. He's a great songwriter. And I think, he's probably choosing the lyrics largely for their rhythmic quality or phonetic sound quality, with the meaning being a secondary kind of thing. Like he wasn't writing particularly nuanced lyrics, in at least not on this album that I was listening to. The other one that you reminded me of is
Can I just talk about Paul McCartney? You know the story about Yesterday, the song? The first lyrics
I
of
know a story
Yesterday
about it. I know a story
was
about it.
scrambled eggs.
Yeah, yeah.
When he came out of the milk. So it's just, as you're absolutely right. For him, it's the sound that they made,
Yeah.
rather than the meaning.
Yes. See, I like that story because it sort of dispels the myth that it was about like he had there was a story or something happened to me and I had to write a song about it. I was like, no. I wrote some nice chords and a nice melody,
Yeah,
and then I retrofitted some lyrics to fit that nice melody.
yeah.
And of course, a much beloved song. The other one is I remember hearing a story from Brian Eno, who, as you probably know, does lots of like sampling in his music. He was one of the first people to start using sampling in a popular way, I guess. And it might have been on the album he did with David Byrne. Anyway, they sampled, I think it was some chanting of a sacred text, maybe the Quran or the Bhagavad Gita or something like that. And he had no idea what the words were. He just like found a recording and then like he just chopped out little bits that he thought had nice sounds. Like he just liked the way the text flowed in that bit, and then sort of like linked them together and made a piece of music, made a composition. And then years later, someone was like, you know what, you put those bits together, it makes like no sense, or it's even semi-offensive the way you put those clips together. And he's like, "Oh, I had no idea. Like, I didn't know what
Yeah,
the
yeah,
text
yeah,
was at
yeah,
all. It was
yeah.
just, it was just about the sound."
But there's also this kind of halfway house between those two. Some songs, when you see the lyrics written down, they don't look banal, but they're not, they don't have a huge amount of meaning in them somehow. They're so oblique and ambiguous, and you kind of think, well, what's that about? But when you hear them as part of the song, they kind of make sense. That's why I said that song lyrics are really, that's why I'm not a lyricist. I can write poems a bit, but poems and song lyrics are two very, very different things. I have enormous admiration for people that write song lyrics.
It's tricky, isn't it? A couple of my favorite artists have very stream of consciousness lyrics. One of them is Neil Finn, who's in Crowded House and Split Ends, and yeah, from New Zealand. And the other one is the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And I feel like a lot of their lyrics are kind of nonsense. You know what I mean? Or like, to see them written down, it's like I couldn't tell you what this song was about. And yet, through the medium of the song, it's somehow you understand the feeling, or
Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah,
understand
yeah,
the mental
yeah,
state of the singer.
yeah.
And it's just a curious phenomenon how that works, but it does work. The following is a recording of a Russian song called, here we go, Nyne, sily, nebesnyia. Hopefully I got that right. What is a common mistake that many choir leaders make?
When teaching a song, they spend too much time on one of the parts, and everyone else stands around getting bored or distracted. That for me is the most common mistake. I experienced that in some of the recent workshops I attended. I was thinking, excuse me, what about us over here? That to me is the biggest thing, and it's something that I fight against. I work hard to not do.
How do you avoid that?
I break songs down into quite small chunks so that I teach um, each part a small chunk very quickly. So I get the harmonies up and running very, very fast before we've done the whole song. And I also I duet them so that I do, let's hear the tenors and the altos, let's hear the sopranos and the altos and the tenors and the basses. And I mix that around all the time. So nobody's standing around for very long without singing and without experiencing how their harmony fits against at least one of the other harmonies. And then I don't always start necessarily with the melody, or having started with the melody, when we go on to the next section, I might go to the altos and teach their bit. So it's kind of, there's always bits floating around and people are really inside the harmonic world of the song as it builds up. Rather than, my experience recently, the whole of the melody line was taught to the sopranos while everyone's standing around, and it was quite tricky, and it didn't help us at all learning our part, because when our part came, it was nothing like the soprano line. By the time, for example, the altos had learned the whole of their line, the sopranos had forgotten their line because they'd been standing there listening to the alto line for so long. So this idea of breaking up into small chunks means that I constantly go back to a part and say, let's do your bit again, rather than them standing around listening to the other bits, which washes their own part out of their head.
Indeed, yeah. I've even seen some singers like blocking their ears while I'm teaching the alto part. Yeah, look, I agree. I think that is something I too try to avoid, spending too much time with one section. What do you think about? I think I saw Tony Backhouse doing this at a workshop, which I quite liked. Whichever part he taught first, he would just teach it to everybody. And I think maybe even he wouldn't announce what part it was. He just goes, everybody sing this, and he starts singing the bass part or whatever. And then maybe afterwards it'd be like, that's the bass, okay? And if you're a bass, keep singing that. And then he'd move on to another part. And I think there are some advantages to that. Obviously the main advantage is everybody's involved right at the beginning. And nobody has to wait around while you teach a different part. But the potential disadvantage is that people get that part stuck in their head and then they can't learn another one. So that's a potential.
I have done that before now, and the downside to that is, if it were the bass part, for example, the basses get a bit bored because they just keep singing their part for much longer than anybody else. That's the main thing, I think. I try and keep everybody equally engaged.
Mm-hmm. It's like spinning plates.
In a simpler song, I have taught all the parts to everybody. That's another way of doing it. And then swapping them around quite randomly does keep people on their toes.
Yeah. That sounds going to be quite tricky. Yeah. I love it. The other thing, the other technique that I got from someone else, Drew Wheaton, he said he loves hearing duets, and I also do love that. So that, I guess that's not so much during the teaching process. I suppose it is the rehearsing process, but just to keep people involved. Let's say I really actually need to fix the altos, but I would just say, let's hear a soprano alto duet, and so that they can, like, two parts at least can stay engaged. Mm-hmm. But there's fewer things going on, so I can listen to the altos and see what's going wrong. But that's a nice little trick. But again, that's more so in the rehearsing phase as opposed to the teaching phase. What skills and abilities do you admire in other choir leaders?
I don't get to see other choir leaders work enough, but there are some I'm not easily impressed, I suppose. But when I am impressed, one individual who impressed me a lot is the woman that leads the London Bulgarian choir. And we were doing, we were attending a weekend where there were choir leaders from different cultures teaching different songs. And so in the morning, perhaps you'd have had 3 sessions already learning 3 different songs. And then the woman from the London Bulgaria choir, it would be her turn. She would connect some of the things that each of those 3 choir leaders had already introduced and bring it into what she was doing. She has this amazing ability to just pay attention and to make connections between things. And so therefore her teaching is similar to what I've just described in doing small chunks and duetting and keeping everybody engaged all the time. Just having that overall consciousness of everything that's going on, I suppose, and being able to make connections between things. So if you're in the middle of teaching a song and you might be having a bit of difficulty, you can say, well, that's just like that bit in that other song we did the other week. So let's just go over that because I just remind you of that. And then it's kind of the same thing that we're trying to do in this song here. So it's having that. I think you're born like that you have this ability to have all these things going on inside your head and being able to make connections between them and to be able to pull them out of the bag to help your singers at any moment. That's what I admire. And again, it's responding in the moment. It's responding to what's happening right in front of you, not what you want to happen. So it's the opposite. The choir leaders I admire are a complete opposite to people who have kind of tunnel vision and a fixed agenda and set expectations.
I love that. That's a great answer. Not what I was expecting, but that's really cool. I will look up the London Bulgarian choir now and see what they're up to. Yeah, that building on the ideas of the other choir leaders that were earlier in the day. That's great. I mean, and not only that's sort of paying professional courtesy as well, isn't it? Because
oh yeah,
she's like, oh, Chris taught us this technique. We can apply that here. I've seen some educators doing that at workshops. Also, when one person runs a warm up and then the next person steps in to conduct the workshop song. And sometimes you think they've collaborated about it beforehand, but sometimes not. And it's just like the warm up person introduced, cleaned up. Let's make our eval really good or something like that, just as a technical thing. And then the subsequent educator is reinforcing that idea or reiterating it and saying that beautiful eval that we had in the warm-ups, that's perfect for this moment in the song. It's things like that, making those connections.
It also shows respect and the fact that you've been listening and paying attention, and you can do that within your own choir, because you can say things like, you remember when Fred asked that question last week about this passage, and we did this, that, and the other. Then, so it shows Fred in that instance that you were actually listening to what he said and you paid attention to it, and it's showing the rest of the choir that you're conscious and listening all the time, and you're paying attention to everybody.
Yeah, imagine how good Fred feels after that as well. He feels validated. He feels like he's a contributor to the choir. And that I guess it makes it feel like it's more of a collaborative process too, even though ostensibly you're the leader and you are running the show, you are still taking inputs from people and then going, yes, we're going to use that. That's part of our choir culture now. And you're signaling that we value input from all members, Fred included. It's just wonderful to see educators do that. I've seen a handful at workshops and things that I've been to that they promote such a positive learning environment. I feel so included. I feel so seen. I feel so comfortable to contribute and to sing my best. It's a really lovely atmosphere to be a part of.
So maybe can I speak to the opposite of what your question was? What you're admiring, quite, because you've kind of touched on it there, is that I think of myself as a teacher. I'm a teacher of songs. That's what I think of myself as. And there are some choir leaders who are interpreters of music, I guess you would say. The singers are kind of a necessary evil to make that sound, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to get it exactly as it's written on the page by this composer at some point, and that's our aim. I'm not here to teach you anything. I'm just here for you to realize the song. as best you can. And when I've done my job, I feel really good because I've kind of forced you to make that sound. But the singers come away that don't feel like they've actually learned anything or been involved somehow. They're at the receiving end of something, willingly or unwillingly. Whereas you referred quite a few times to educators. And I think of myself as an educator and as a teacher. And by the medium I've chosen is harmony singing. And we actually, at the end of the day, make a really good sound and everybody's very, very happy. But it's a teaching environment, is how I think of it. And some musical directors are just coming at it as kind of musicians, and the singers are their instruments.
Yeah. Oh, you took the words right out of my mouth there. I've heard that expression before, is that the choir is the instrument and the conductor is the musician. And I understand why people say that, like in a sense that's true, but it also it undermines what a choir can be, which is a lot more than that, or at least a lot more. It can be a lot more humane than that, and a lot more like a collaboration and like a jam session, you know. David Byrne from Talking Heads.
Yeah,
I've got his book behind me somewhere here. He's got a book called How Music Works.
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah, it's a great book. And he was talking about Talking Heads and wanting them to be not like, though he's sort of ostensibly the lead singer, more of a collaborative. I think he used the term musical commune, like where everybody brings ideas to the group and everybody is on equal footing, and that shows in their music. It's very sort of groove based, jammy kind of music.
Yeah.
But a choir can be the same thing, if it's being led correctly, or if it has the right inputs, shall we say. Here's one for the singers who are listening. Why do you say self-awareness is the secret to great singing?
If you are trying to develop and progress as a singer, no matter what any choir leader or singing teacher tells you, if you don't have an innate understanding of yourself, it will make no difference. It will just bounce off you. I'm sure you've seen this in warm-ups, for example, when you ask people to just do something simple like stretch their arms up high. And some people are stretching their arms up in front of them, to the sides. One arm's longer than the other. Or you say to people, take a nice big breath and make sure your shoulders don't go up. And then everyone's breathing and their shoulders are going up. If you say again, so can we just do that again? But when you breathe in, don't raise your shoulders. So everyone breathes in and their shoulders go up again. They don't have the self-awareness that their shoulders are going up. And as a choir leader, you don't have time to go around to individuals and say, I put my hand on my shoulder. Do you realize your shoulders are, oh yeah, I realize now. They begin to develop a self-awareness and they can stop doing it. And it's very frustrating as a choir leader to try and do some vocal training or things like tension in the shoulders. And people don't have the self-awareness to take what you're saying on board. So you could spend thousands on singing lessons. And if you don't have the self-awareness to take on board what the singing teacher is telling you, you will learn nothing. So I think I wrote a blog post, something like this, was it the secret to singing that no singing teacher ever tells you or something?
Yes.
And the secret is self-awareness, because otherwise nothing anybody says will make any sense whatsoever. Back to that guy who suddenly discovered that if you listen carefully, it's a much nicer experience. 10 minutes later, he's singing loud again. He lacks the self-awareness to realize that he'd gone back to singing loud again.
Yes. That's why I wanted to ask you that question, because I loved that blog post, and I realized that I try to teach my singers to do that too. I also teach some private voice lessons from home. Most of the time, it's singers from the choir who want a little bit of extra tuition or a little bit of help learning the songs or whatever. And I try to equip them with tools so that they can effectively practice at home. And so, one of the things that like every singer needs to work on basically is posture and alignment. And so what I have is, in my room where I teach, I have 2 body length mirrors that are set up sort of perpendicular to each other. And if you stand in the right spot, you can see yourself from the front and from the side. Kind of like if you go to a change room at a department store, and you can look at the clothes on from different angles. And so you can actually see yourself from the side and see whether your head is sticking out. And that is a big one for a lot of singers. And so, okay, and I just say, okay, well, just sing la, 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 with your head sticking out like that. Now bring your head back a little bit and sing it again. Now bring your head back all the way so it's straight up and sing it again. And actually, the other thing I get them to do is record the lesson as well. And so or I take their phone and I make a little video of them doing the 3 different head positions, and then play it back to them and go, look, what did you hear? What do you notice? What do you feel? And just I love asking that question, because I had singing teachers that were good, and they kept asking me the same question, like, what did you notice? What did you feel? Because ultimately, if you're going to make a lasting habit, you need to know how that habit feels. And so yeah, singing awareness is like, it's not the lesson itself, or self-awareness is not the lesson itself, but it's what makes the lesson stick. If you notice that the head alignment makes a positive difference to your sound, the self-awareness is what's going to make that into a lasting habit and make you into a more consistent, better singer overall. Whatever you want to do, really. Like I do the same thing with conducting. I video myself conducting and watch it back and go, ugh, that wasn't clear. Or you notice odd things that you're doing, and you're going, that is, I'm sending a bit of noise in my signal there. That is, why is my leg doing that weird thing?
Yeah.
That is not necessary. So yeah, I like, self-awareness is huge for the singers, and also I try to turn that back on myself as a conductor as much as I can.
There's a similar thing. I think of another one called something like Mind the Gap between, because on the London Underground, that's the announcer when the tube train pulls in says, mind the gap. Mind the gap between the warm-up and the singing. Because people in the warm-up can have the most amazing posture. They can be relaxed. Their shoulders are down, their jaws loose. Everything's fantastic. And then we start singing and it all goes out the window. Again, because they lack the self-awareness that they had those wonderful things, and now they're doing something else, they can just let it all go.
Yeah. It's like, I feel like I say this phrase so many times in rehearsals. I'm like, remember what we did in the warm-up? Do you remember how good we sounded in the warm-up?
Yeah.
Why were we sounding so good in the warm-up? Because we did this.
Yeah.
Because we took a good breath. Is that applicable to this song? The next recording from Chris is a South African song called Koloi ya Elija. It's a very popular church song. It's a bit unusual in that it originated as a folk song about driving a car.
Sion.
So this is a pretty good job description for a choir leader, I think. I think it was from the post, something to do with, so you're thinking of starting a community choir, something along those lines. And so this is good advice for a choir leader. Your job is to bring out the best in people, to give them a good time, to create a group who work as a team, to make beautiful music together. In an ideal world, the best choral directors are those who are not really noticed. The best result, in my book at least, is when a group feels that they've done it themselves and that I've made myself redundant.
Completely. I get quite a lot of feedback from my workshops about things like people feel safe, that they're able to make mistakes, that they're better than they thought they were, that it's a kind of atmosphere of possibilities, that everything is relatively easy, that none of it in a sense is that important. It's just a song, don't get too wound up on it. And people come out feeling that they've done something that they didn't think they were able to do. But I've just given them permission, I suppose, and created a space where everybody feels comfortable and equal, and that they are able to do things that are harder than perhaps they thought they could do, if that makes sense. And that's kind of my selling point. That's why people come back and do workshops with me. For some reason, I managed to create that atmosphere. I have no idea how I do it, really. But it's just about being open and being relaxed and behaving as if, yeah, well, of course, it's, just do it. It's not a big deal, really. And it sort of works.
That's some beautiful closing words. Chris, it's been a lovely time talking with you. I'd love to talk for like 10 more hours. It'd be great, but
yeah, I really enjoyed it. The time just swept by. I didn't realize how long I've been doing this. It was great.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really hope we get to meet in person in real life, as they say, sometime.
Yeah.
I'll let you know if I'm ever over in the UK and I'll come to a workshop, hang out. Or if you're in Australia, feel free to drop in.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure. It's been great. I really enjoyed it.
Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed that chat with Chris Rowbury and that you are feeling inspired for your next rehearsal. I'm going to depart from tradition slightly and leave you with something different. Some of you may know that I'm a choral arranger, and I've recently been playing with a new program called Synthesizer V for making vocal demos of my arrangements and learning tracks. So, here is my arrangement of the sea shanty called Mingulay Boat Song. You can check out all of my arrangements at danbennettmusic.com. See you next time.
Heave her ho, boys, let her go, boys, swing her head round into the weather. Heave her ho, boys, let her go, boys, sailing homeward to Mingulay. What care we though white the minches? What care we, boys, for windy weather, when we know that every inch is sailing homeward to Mingulay. Heave her ho, boys, let her go, boys, swing her head round into the weather. Heave her ho, boys, let her go, boys, sailing homeward to Mingulay. Wives are waiting by the pier head, gazing and seaward from the heather. Bring her round, boys, then we'll anchor ere the sun sets on Mingulay. Heave her ho, boys, let her go, boys. Swing her head round into the weather. Heave her ho, boys, let her go, boys. Sailing homeward to Mingulay. Ships return now, heavy laden. Mothers holding bairns are crying. They'll return yet when the sun sets. Sailing homeward to Mingulay. Heave her ho, boys, let her go, boys. Swing her head round into the weather. Heave her ho, boys, let her go, boys. Sailing homeward to Mingulay. Heave her ho, boys, let her go, boys. Swing her head round into